The Brown Park Podcast is brought to you by Grow Clinics. They're Australia's leading hair transplant clinics, and you can go to growclinics.com.au. Hello.
G'day, mate. What is news?
Today is motivational, whatever the day is that you're listening to this podcast on.
Motivational weekday and a weekend day. Anyway,
or
move
weekend.
on.
Yes. His name's Jimmy Rex. He's going to motivate you because that's what he does. He gets people out of their comfort zones. And today he's going to tell you why and how on the Brown Park Podcast.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Okay, question.
Oh, have you got a question? Yeah.
I think I do. I've just come up with one.
Okay, yeah.
What is the most uncomfortable thing you have ever done that's pushed you out of your comfort zone more than anything? So we've done a fair whack of stuff over the last, few years.
Yep.
Including that or outside of that. What's the most uncomfortable thing you've ever done? Apart from sell insurance in the bank.
Yeah, that was uncomfortable. I would say there was a rough point in my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all me. As in, my brain wasn't right.
Yep.
And we went to counselling.
Ooh.
Or went to a therapist. And I feel like I'm going to cry, which is really weird. And I sat there and I listened to all the ways that I was letting my wife down and I didn't know it.
Far out.
And it was literally just because my brain wasn't functioning. I wasn't doing the work on myself.
Yep.
And it was at that moment that I'd realized that my best friend and my person that I want to spend the rest of my life with, that I had actually been letting her down a lot with the way I was behaving, with what I was doing. And that was probably the most uncomfortable moment of my life. And I think it pushed me to try to change what I was doing and how I was acting and how I was taking it for granted.
Just coasting.
That should just always be there.
Yeah. Well, see, I mean, I guess that comes down to the whole what uncomfort brings. Because if you didn't go through that uncomfort, then it wouldn't, who knows where that would have ended up, right?
Yeah, it was just a moment where I've just gone, wow, I've actually been a bit of a fuckwit. And there wasn't anything that I could put back on her because the support that she's always given me was, phenomenal.
Mm.
So I think I was just I think I was going through a bit of a midlife crisis. Didn't really know where I stood in the world, felt like a bit of a failure with everything. And yeah, so I sat there and I listened to it and I sort of walked away and went, yeah, I'm not being a great husband.
And now look at you.
There you go.
Well, we went deep on that one, didn't we?
You bastard.
We went deep. But look, I think it's important for the listeners to hear because it's true. Like doing uncomfortable things is never comfortable. That's why you avoid it.
Yeah.
So at least you got to that point where you went, all right, we're going to tackle this head on. And then it definitely saved your marriage.
Yeah. And I've done a lot of work on myself, both through mentoring and both through therapy and I'm now doing uncomfortable things that I would never have ever done before when it comes to me personally.
And now it's only 80% your fault.
Yeah.
The Brown Podcast.
Jimmy Rex, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Where are you at the moment?
So I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States.
Okay. And is that home base for you? Is that you're on the road or what are you doing?
Yeah, this is one of those rare weekends where I'm actually home. So I was in Detroit earlier this week, and I was in Jackson Hole last week, but home this weekend. So
nice. And we've interviewed somebody that you've interviewed as well, Mason Sawyer.
Oh,
he's from Utah, yeah?
Yeah, what a story, man. Crazy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's been through the ringer.
The amount of people that listen to this podcast that have come back to us and gone, oh my God, I've never cried so much in a podcast. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy story, man. Well, I first heard of Mason. I run a men's coaching program called We Are the They, and we do all these crazy adventure trips. And we were doing a trip to Iceland, taking 40 of us. And each trip we take, we sponsor somebody that's kind of had a rough year, a guy, could use some love from some other men's of friendship, and we bring him with us. And I put the thing on my Instagram to, hey, who does anybody know? And like 10 different people were like, you should take this guy, Mason Sawyer. I had a couple hundred people respond, but a bunch of this guy, Mason. So I looked into his story, and that's how we first connected. I was just like, oh my gosh, if anybody's worthy, it's him. And so ended up offering it to him, but he has his son Blue, and so he wasn't able to get away for a week. But me and him built a friendship that's been going ever since.
So tell me the Jimmy Rex story. How did you get to this point? And I find We Are the They a bit of a tongue twister, but I love what you're doing with it, and that's why we wanted to get you on the show to talk about it, because it's very important.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And, it's been a long journey to get to here. Now I'll kind of explain why it's called We Are the They, because it is a little bit of a tongue twister, but it's got a lot of meaning behind it. I was a real estate agent for 17 years, was one of the top agents in the country. 4 years ago, I kind of hit a peak. I was the number one agent in Utah. I just sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. It was a $32.5 million home. Oh. And it was a 7-figure commission in 20 minutes, basically. And I just kind of was at this spot where I was like, man, is this it? I just felt like I needed to do something more impactful. And so I started kind of leaning into, what do people reach out to me for? Why do people come to me? Like, I had a lot of friends that would ask me for advice or ask for coaching or just ask for my opinion on stuff. And the same things kept popping up. And number one was, where do I find a group of friends like you guys have? And the second one was, I feel like I'm stuck in life. How do I get out of this spot? And I knew I was really good at those two things. And so I basically started thinking of what this program would look like and realized it was going to be a men's coaching program. And so, so it's all built, We Are the They launched about 2 years ago, and it's all built around the idea of helping men build community and doing it through living, exceptional lives. And so that's, being in integrity, being authentic, being vulnerable, but also experiencing big adventures. So we just got back, took 70 guys to run with the bulls in Spain. And, we jump off these big cliffs on rope swings, and we walk on hot coals, and we do, swim with tiger sharks and all the fun things. But ultimately, it's to help people push past that fear that paralyzes people a lot of times and helps them get out of their comfort zone. And so that's the whole premise as far as why we did it.
So when you did the running with the bulls and you took 70 there, did you bring 70 home?
Yeah. It was like, it was going to be a short program if we did not. But so essentially, I had one guy get ran over pretty hard by a bull. One guy almost got arrested in the bull ring for messing around with the bull too much. But, to take 70 guys there and bring 70 home, I was happy. No broken bones. Nobody got caught. And, it was interesting. The one that we ran that day was the second most injuries they'd had at a day in the running of the bulls in 15 years.
Because when you do the running of the bulls get bigger and bigger every day, don't they? Like, what day did you do it?
They just do it different. They do a different, they call it like the different companies that raise the bulls, the vaqueros or whatever. And, but we did it, I think it was day 6. And so they're kind of known as some crazy bulls, but there was a guy in a purple shirt. If you just Google running of the bulls, purple shirt, this dude gets messed up. He almost died. It was the closest to a death they've had in like 15 years. He got hit, and as he was being flipped up, another bull jumped and hit him again, and he was just out cold. But there was quite a few injuries, so I was grateful we got everyone back okay.
Did they come back more messed up than they were before they left?
The guys, it's kind of the whole premise is like, I have so many. I was with the guy. Well, I'll give you an example. I was coaching a guy yesterday. We were at lunch, and for 15 years, he's kind of been getting in his own way. And a lot of people do this, and he's like, he can't decide if he wants to be in or out of his marriage. He knows he's talented at his job, but he's not really giving it his all. So he's not really getting ahead financially. He's got a good relationship with his kids, but feels like he owes them more with his wife and all these things. He's just kind of stuck, and he can't make these decisions. And it's like, that's the guy that I formed this program for, because if you could go run with bulls and face down an 1,800 down bull trying to run you over, all of a sudden talking to your wife and having a tough conversation is not that hard to do. And so that's kind of why we go do all these crazy things. It's, we exercise that muscle of jumping off the cliff, of taking that scary moment, a scary move. And a lot of guys get paralyzed there, and it causes them. I mean, there's men that will go 30 years not talking to somebody in their life to avoid having one tough conversation. I mean, that's a very common story. And so, you know, the whole premise is just to help people to push past that moment of fear and that uncomfortability. And we know that on the other side of that is where everything that you want lies.
I'm squirming in my seat because I am that person and have been that person.
Yes, you have.
I have been that person. And that's what spurred this on. And spurred our friendship on, because I was stuck in that moment where I felt like I wasn't being a good father. I felt like I wasn't being a good husband. You know, I was battling depression anyway. And he's just gone, what do you do? What do you do for you? And so was my wife. My wife was like, you don't do anything for you. You do it for everybody else. And you can't be a good person if you're not looking after, you can't be a good father, husband, everything, if you're not looking after you. So we've gone and done some stupid shit.
Yes.
Beautiful, man.
Well, I mean, I've like in the physical act of things, like jumping out of a plane or running with the bulls, that type of shit, you know, makes me feel alive, and I love it, which is the polar opposite to this guy right here. He, would prefer to, you know,
sit in
have a massage.
Air-conditioned comfort and drink a nice latte.
Well, that's why, you know, we invite people nowadays. It's very popular, you know, to do the cold plunges, because it's the same feeling. It's like that thing you don't want to do. It's like waking up early. It's like I just did a 4-day fast a couple months ago, just water, and wanted to push past those moments of comfortability. You learn a lot about yourself, and, you know, and I'm currently doing 4 months sober, no alcohol. And I try to do things that help push me past where I'm comfortable, because we live in a society, let's just be real about it. Like, everything we want is so easy to get these days. If last night I had a date and I had this girl over and I wanted Cafe Rio, this burrito place. I just get on my phone, 40 minutes later, some college kids dropping off a burrito for me. You know what I mean? It's like, we have our dinner ready. It's like, that's not normal. You're not supposed to be able to do that. You know, there's no effort needed to go and eat. And that's just the society that we live in, and God bless it. It's beautiful. But we have to purposely look for discomfort. My buddy Jason Van Camp was he was an Army general, and he basically says, we have to seek deliberate discomfort. And so you have to do things that make you uncomfortable, so that when, you know, hard things happen or when things don't go our way, it doesn't completely throw us off. You're used to that. You're used to just battling through things. And back in the day, that's what we had to do. Nowadays, I can't remember the last time I was hungry or cold and it wasn't on purpose, you know?
Well, I mean, everything is so, like you say, easier to get. Even things you can't afford. You can go get a line of credit at the snap of the fingers, and then all of a sudden get that dopamine hit and look at your new Gucci bag, but you haven't worked for it. There's no discomfort to actually get it. So, yeah, things are so accessible.
Right. I mean, the only reason to have nice things, like, I will never wear like a fake watch or something like that, because it's energetically, I put off this vibe where I know I'm a fraud. Whereas if you buy a watch that you really wanted and you say to them, you have the money to do it, like, you did it the right way, you earned it. The only reason to wear it is because it gives you confidence, because it's a reminder that you're the kind of person that does what they say they're going to do. The entire reason you wear the nice watch isn't to show off a nice watch. It's because it shows you a physical reminder of, like, I do hard things. I accomplish the thing I set out to do. And that's confidence. And then you radiate confidence, and people are attracted to that. When you're wearing the fake stuff, or like if you were to buy a Gucci bag, it's like, I use the example, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and the whole thing, the entire beauty of that was the climb. It was all the stories. It was the memories. I could have taken a helicopter to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. I wouldn't be telling everybody, you guys, I've been to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. It'd have no meaning behind it. It's the same thing with that. And so you're right. Like, nowadays, what's the problem with cheap dopamine is, like, you're getting dopamine is in place to reward us when we do something hard, to tell us good job. Like, back in the day, you know, to get a dopamine hit from an orgasm, for example, you had to go out, you had to win over a woman, you had to go through that hustle, you had to figure out those skills, and then you got to, you know.
And now you can just order it, and in 45 minutes, you'll have
it. So you've got this fake dopamine hit that didn't have any work, and it's the reason why our society's got everything backwards now.
But it is a lot cheaper. I mean, Christ, the amount of money I spent on going out drinking just to be in a bar with a woman, well, you know, a lot cheaper to go swipity swipe now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's cheaper for financially maybe, but it's not cheaper on what it's doing to us.
No,
like,
that's true.
We were never supposed. I mean, you think about it, the richest man 100 years ago didn't have access to as many beautiful women as a kid in high school today in an hour on his phone. Like, that's not, you know.
And I think that's why relationships are so disposable these days, because everyone's just looking for the next best thing. It's just so easy to exit.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, again, like, you had a crush on your high school sweetheart, but you moved away or she moved away and you never saw each other again.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I was listening to this divorce lawyer. He was on Soft White Underbelly recently doing a podcast, and my friend's the co-host on that. And he was talking about, he said, if I were to make a perfect device to break up marriages, I would create Facebook. He's like, that's basically the perfect formula because it's keeping people in touch with people that otherwise wouldn't be in their lives. It's seeing things. It's this facade of what you don't have, that you're seeing the best of what other people do have, and so, yeah, I don't know how I got talking about this, but it's true.
Yeah. That's how we roll, Jimmy. That's how we roll, brother. Well, I mean, you talk about the ice bath and seeking discomfort. We actually did. Right. We did the ice bath, and there was an 8-minute challenge. And we said, all right, let's go give it a crack. Christo here put his toes in. Well, no, he got his feet in. But couldn't quite submerge
I went
himself.
up to the shins, man.
So I don't want to say this, but normally I would say to one of my coaching clients, where does this show up elsewhere in your life?
Oh, everywhere. So absolutely free it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm going to challenge you to do it all the way in next time, Krista.
Yeah, it's
we have to give it.
It's one of those things that I feel like since we did it, and it wasn't that long ago. It was about a year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, but you weren't in a good space though,
and I feel like I could at least get up to the knee now.
Hey Jimmy, I don't want to gloat, but I did the 8 minutes. So
yeah. Impressive. I bought one of the plunges. I put it out my back porch because I'm smart enough to know that I bought the horse trough. I was going to fill it with ice every day. I didn't use it once in 8 months. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not going to go through that effort to ice bath. I don't even want to use my plunge that's already ready to go. Yeah. You got to take 3 steps out my back porch, but I use it, once or twice a week usually, and I need to get to every day, but it's a real thing. It's hard.
Okay, so this is once again off topic of what we've been talking about, but what does it actually do for you? Apart from freeze your ass off, what is it?
There's so many benefits.
Yeah, I mean, so there's all sorts of thoughts and things like your body's releasing endorphins and different things to help. The people say it burns calories, all that stuff. I don't know about any of that. Here's the one thing I know. It's forcing you to do something you're uncomfortable doing, which is good for you mentally, period. It's like fasting doesn't necessarily need to do anything. It's just good for you to do something where your body's telling you no, because you're going, no, I'm stronger than you, body. I'm going to do, when I say go, we go. When I say we're doing something, we do that thing. If nothing else, it's worth it for that for me.
And you've got a pretty hectic morning routine that you do pretty much every morning, don't you?
I do. I want to caveat that, though, with I didn't do that till about a year ago. And so, I give my routine, and like somebody in their 20s is like, I want to take that morning routine. It's like, no, in my 20s, my ass got up within 20 minutes. I was on the phones making calls for 4 hours. Like, there's a time and a place. Like, this last couple of years, decided to pay a lot more attention to myself and pour a lot more back into myself. Financially, I set myself up in a place where I can do this. But I do have a very dialed in morning routine. Now, one of them is, so I want to be up at 7 a.m. every day, but it was so hard for me to get up that early because I stayed up late. I partied a lot, hung out with friends late. And so what I decided, I have my men's coaching program. About half the members, I have 400 guys that I coach. About half of them live in Utah. So every morning, a different one meets me at my door at 7 o'clock a.m. So I get up at 6:50, and at 7 o'clock, I meet one of my guys at my door, and we go for a walk for 45 minutes and do like a coaching session. After that, I come back. I have this stretching routine that's about 12 minutes that I do every day, just a quick thing to get my body limber. And then I like to do my Peloton at a 10 incline at 3 miles an hour. It's a fat burning zone. I do that for 30 minutes. Then I usually go into the cold plunge, take my shower or whatever. And then from there, I like to read 20 minutes. I like to journal, do my affirmations, pray. And then essentially after that, I'm ready to start my day. Meditate for 20 minutes. I think I said that, but...
Around 12 o'clock, you're done.
Like 10. 10
o'clock.
Yeah, no, I do. And, I used to be, I mean, for 10 years straight, I was in my office by 8 a.m. It was just like, that's what I did, And so now, I had this important interview yesterday. These people called me and they wanted to talk, and they said, hey, how early is too early? And I said, well, anything before 10 a.m. is my time. And so you're on the East Coast. That's 2 hours apart. I said, I hate to tell you, but noon is the earliest I can do it. And they're like, okay, do you make exceptions? I said, not for stuff like this. I don't need to. Like, yeah, I mean, I really focus on me. And the thing is I'm holding space for 400 men. And when you're dealing with that many guys, I deal with big issues every day. I get the call where the guy's losing his job or divorce, his wife cheating on him, he's cheating on his wife, like whatever. Like my calls are big. My meetings every day are with guys that are going through real things. And so for me to be able to hold that much space, I have to take care of me first. And I just learned that. And so I don't, you guys even set up this interview. I think I was like very much like, this is my window and cause it works for me and I want to do it, but I can't do it at the sacrifice of myself or I get burned
100%.
out.
No,
Absolutely.
good.
Brown
Park.
Hey, the Brown Park podcast is supported by Grow Clinics, and we love them for it. They've actually got a brand new website if you go to growclinics.com.au, because they're here to help you defy genetics.
Well, we've both had the procedure done, and I would say that I think I look at least 5 years younger as a minimum.
Yeah, we were having this conversation last night with somebody, and I reckon I look 20 years younger.
Yeah, I reckon too. I mean, again, and we've
I'm
spoken
kidding, I'm
about it
totally
before, but I mean, I reckon it's giving you at least 10, because I didn't really, I mean, we both of us didn't realise how bald either of us were, but you specifically, I see pictures of you pre-hair transplant, I went, wow, like you were like looking quite a bit older than your age, which is fine if you're cool with it, but if you want to fix it, there is a solution.
Funny you should say that. I'm actually up on the Grow website.
It's like we had this pre-planned.
Right? You can go and check it out. I'm actually on the main page. If you go to our results and scroll through, you'll actually find Christo. And it shows you what I was to what I am now. No matter what stage you're at, you can go and have a look at what they can do and what sets them apart from the rest. They have a solution for any stage of hair loss, and they can design a comprehensive strategy to help you regain your hair, combining their leading hair transplant technique, prescription treatments, and everyday products to get you the best possible results. Growclinics.com.au. Defy genetics with Grow.
Follow the Brown Park podcast on socials at Brown Park Official.
So you do some weird and crazy shit, right? What's apart from running with the bulls, what's the most outlandish thing that you've done with your crew?
With my crew, we went and swam in the middle of the ocean with no cages with tiger sharks. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, nice.
The best. I mean, you guys are in Australia, you know about sharks and stuff, but they're actually not dangerous.
No, I wouldn't do that here.
Fair. There's a place to do it, right? Like we did it at Tiger Beach, and that ecosphere allows for it. They know that you're not food. We have this cliff. It's like 250 feet. It's a rope swing, and we do this. This is the initiation into the program for each guy. It's their first weekend into the group. The night before, we do an exercise where they leave behind a limiting belief, a bad habit, or a negative relationship they need to get rid of, and they jump off the cliff, the rope swing. You go to my Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex, and watch these videos, but they jump off the cliff, and it's a 250-foot free fall, and then the rope catches them, and they swing through this canyon. They come up a new man, but that was pretty
love to do that.
Terrifying. It's pretty awesome. If you guys are ever out in Utah, we'll go set up the rope swing. But we do bungee jumping, we do skydiving, walking on hot coals, cliff jumping. The one thing I just did with my guys that was very scary for them is I made them all give a 9-minute TED talk. And so each one of my guys got up and we set up the whole thing. I mean, for some people, that's as scary as it gets, right?
Yeah, see, I'd much prefer to rope swing than do that.
Yeah. A lot of guys said that was the most scary thing we've done yet. Oh, I threw a rodeo in the summer, and about 20 of my guys rode a bull. I did as well, a real bull. That was pretty terrifying. That was the one thing that I was the most nervous about, because most of the stuff I do, it's very calculated. It has the appearance of danger, but it's not actually that dangerous. The bull's pretty unpredictable. When you're riding a bull, you can get messed up pretty good. And so that one I was pretty worried about. But we had some cowboys, and we're doing a demolition derby this summer coming up. And so we just all the bucket list things, man.
So then how do you, like, for the guys that come in that don't want to step off the cliff or, jump off the rope swing or, jump out of a plane, what tools do you use to get them to commit and get them to take the leap?
So it's a couple of things. Number one is they're attracted to my group because we're doing those things. And so we don't get a whole lot of those guys, but there's been a few that are like, I'm not doing the swing. I'm not doing the swing. And I just, I basically kind of help them build a vision for why they should do it. Because what they always say is, I see why you guys I don't need to do that. And it's kind of like, look, I was in sales before I did coaching. I can sell anything, right? And so I just say, oh, cool. So if you don't need it, then there's no reason not to do it, right? And I'm like, dude, like, if nothing else, like, as a life experience, don't you want to experience what that is about? Like, that feeling. Like, no, it's like, dude, it's okay to admit you're scared. And I'll challenge the shit out of them. I'm like, it's okay to be scared of the swing. I'm not scared of the swing. If you're not scared, then there's no reason not to jump.
Yeah.
No, I'm just not going to do something I don't want to do. I was like, that's stupid. We should do stuff every day we don't want to do. Like, that's the opposite of what you should be doing. And I just kind of keep selling them until they finally, it gets to the ridiculous to they're like, okay, I'll jump off the damn cliff. You know, and I've only had one guy out of about 200 not jump.
It's definitely that sales, because I'm in sales as well, and it's being able to pick up that phone when you don't want to make that prospecting call or call that client or whatever. I think it's that helps, you know, people like us step forward into life, because we're used to making those phone calls, because it's so easy to go, oh, just email, or Jesus Christ, I hope this goes to voicemail, because, you know, I'll just leave a message and maybe you won't call back, and that's much easier.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in real estate, I had a saying on the side of my wall, and all it said was, and my mentor would always say this, it said, the difference between successful and unsuccessful people is successful people have merely learned to do the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. It really is that. That's everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that simple.
It's funny that you say that, because I used to, like, before, I work in radio, but before I did that, I worked in the banking industry, and I had to make cold calls to lots of people to try to sell shit, and I used to pray that it went through to voicemail, because I hated it.
There's a service called Slide Dial. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It goes automatically to their voice message, so you could always use that and then just leave messages for everybody.
That wasn't around when I was doing that.
I would have saved you a lot of effort.
But and just so much of what you're talking about is resonating with the person that I used to be and am desperately trying not to be.
Well, your improvements over the last, 3-4 years have been pretty epic. Like, the person that Christo was 3 years ago is completely different to where you are now. So the steps you're taking are definitely making an impact.
Therapy. It's
really
stepping
cool,
out of my comfort zone. It's hanging out with this bozo, getting me to do weird shit. Like, you know, one of the things that we did, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but we were kind of like, he was like, let's get you out of your comfort zone. What have you wanted to do? And I said, I wanted to climb Mount Warning, which is a mountain here, which is now closed.
Yeah.
So you can't do it anymore. So he went, yep, all right, let's do it. And when we got to a point, I'm like, I can't do this. And he goes, yes, you can. You're coming along. Let's do it. We're not coming here and going halfway up. So we did that. And then we booked a trip to Chernobyl. Yeah.
Wow.
And we went out there because there was a city called Pripyat that I'd always wanted to visit. And that was way out of my comfort zone to go to something like that in the Ukraine. And he went, yeah, I'm down. Let's go. And so we went and did that.
Well, that's what, we need friends like that. Like, we need people that'll be there for us. We need friends that'll not let us settle for less than what we can be, and that you're there to just support us. They don't need us to be different, but they say, hey, I know you got nothing left. I got you for a little bit. Let's go. And later on, you can have me. I climbed, when I talk about, when I speak, one of the stories I tell is about when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. We did it with this really special group called the Water Boys. There's a couple NFL football players and then some special forces military guys from the U.S. military. And one of the guys that came with was a wounded warrior. He'd lost his leg in a tank accident in Iraq, or not accident, explosion, whatever, got blown up. And so this dude had a fake leg. He had one leg basically, and he's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And this guy, Dave Babora, he was a former NFL middle linebacker. He had he started this foundation called the Adaptive Training Foundation. And what they would do is they would take people that had lost limbs in different accidents, and they would help them create purpose by doing things like skiing, wakeboarding, climbing mountains, doing these different things. And he'd been working with this guy. This guy had been suicidal. His name was Q, Phil, but we called him Q. He'd been suicidal for, basically since he lost his leg. And long story short, the first day we're there, I'm at lunch with Q before we take off at breakfast, and I'm talking to him, and, he's pretty shy. And he says, the reason I'm doing this is I want to be able to show the other people that are in my position that they have something to live for. Like 22 former military people take their lives every single day. Yeah. I'm like, wow, that's really special, man. And so the day one, I'm climbing this mountain. I'm climbing next to Dave, this NFL linebacker. And I said, dude, really cool how you trained Q for this mountain. He told me about his big cause so he can help other men to find purpose. And he goes, let me tell you something that he's not going to tell you, Jimmy. He said, I got the call 3 months ago from his wife. He had a shotgun in his mouth. So this guy was suicidal 3 times, damn near pulled the trigger. He said, the truth is he struggles every single day. He said, if he can get to the top of this mountain, it'll prove to himself that he can do anything and he's going to have a beautiful life. He's already got a wife and kids, 2 daughters. He says, if he doesn't get to the top of this mountain, I truly don't think he'll be alive in 6 months. And I'm like, oh shit, like no pressure, time to get to the top of this mountain, right? And we're climbing. Has either of you climbed Kilimanjaro by chance?
No.
Not yet.
Okay,
Not
so
yet.
Now, though. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a false summit about 600 feet from the top, and you get altitude. I mean, we had guys that were NFL defensive backs that were just almost couldn't make it because they were thrown. We had a Marine turn back. It's just crazy. And so, I mean, this mountain's no joke. And this guy with one leg, I watched him fall 50, 60 times. He just kept getting back up. And we got to the false summit, and you got to keep in mind, this dude, we're about 4 hours behind schedule because, you know, waiting for this guy that's just doing everything he can on the last day. 5-day hike. He hiked for almost 60 hours. And we get to the false summit, and I'm standing there. And by the way, this group is like 10 NFL guys, 5 special forces militaries, and me. I'm a realtor. Like, this is 5 years. What the hell am I going to do? But the guy that was in charge of making sure, the guy from Africa that was making sure that we got back safely, his name was Orca. And he's talking to Chris Long, who was in charge of our group. And they're like, hey, man, he got to here. He's far enough. We got to turn him back. It's getting, you know, we're way behind. He's done. He's got nothing left. And I'm sitting there listening because we're not at the top yet. We got 600 feet to go. It's about an hour around the rim to get to that top. And I'm like looking around, like, somebody do something. Like, this guy needs to get to the top. And I can't say anything. Again, I'm the freaking realtor. And I see Dave coming, and I run up to him. I'm like, dude, they're trying to get Q to turn around and do something. And Dave, his 6'5" linebacker, comes running up, and he grabs Q. He goes, hey, he goes, you're not fucking done yet. He's like, you've got more to give to this mountain. We're going to the top. That's what we trained for. He's like, okay. And he turns to the other two. He goes, he's not done. We're going to the top. We'll carry his ass. And we throw his arms around our shoulders, and we start going up the mountain. And 2 hours later, we get to the top, and everybody's crying. And I share that story because it was like the most beautiful moment of my life. But that's what it looks like to love. And that moment, you know, and I like to tell people, like, who's your Dave Vabora? Who's there for you? When he was done. He'd fallen 60 times. He had nothing left in the tank. He had nothing left to go off. It's like, who's your Dave Vabora? Who's the guy that's going to say, no, you got more to give. We're going to the top. That's why we're here. And we need those guys. So, Dion, you've been that guy for Cristo. It's beautiful, man. Like, we need those people in our lives because sometimes we are done. Sometimes there's nothing left to give. We just need someone to freaking hold us for a minute. And that dude is, I can proudly say, it's been 4 years and he's thriving and he's got a beautiful life going. And I don't know what would have happened at the top. Maybe it would have been fine, but I don't like to think about the alternative. So I don't know. That story kind of just came to me, but
love that.
Just a beautiful example, man.
Well, there's nothing worse than seeing a mate or a friend not living up to their potential because we all usually hang in like-minded circles. So if you're hanging in a circle of friends, there's a certain amount of accountability or responsibility as a friend or a mate to help them step up and live up to their potential.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing is like a lot of times our friends will be able to, or we need somebody that can see in us what we can't even see in ourselves, right? And so my personal coach right now is a guy named Ed Milet. You've probably heard of him before. And what he always says to people when he meets them is he says, let me tell you about you. And he'll start telling you things about you that you know to be true, but you don't even believe in yourself. And sometimes we just need somebody to like give us some borrowed credibility. Like we'll give so much credibility to a stranger. You see, you talking to me right now, you're probably like, man, this guy probably has this. And it's like, you don't know shit about me. Like at the end of the day, give yourself that credit because there's things like none of us behind closed doors have everything figured out. We're all just trying to do our best, but we'll give a total stranger complete, empathy and benefit of the doubt. And then on ourselves, we're so hard. And so just encourage you to give yourself some of that grace you were so willing to give to others.
Well, there is a flip side to that because I was more uncomfortable about starting this podcast and Christo was the one that pushed this.
Well, that's the beauty of it. Like sometimes you need to be held up. Sometimes he does, and I have that with all my friends. Like sometimes I'm the one that's just like, I need somebody to freaking help me out here. And then sometimes I can be that guy for them. But that's, friendships, there's no neediness. There's no like, dude, you didn't call me. It's just like, hey, if you need me, I'm here. I'm going to check in on you anyway, just in case you don't reach out. But also like when I need you, I know you're there and I'm going to reach out. And so that's what those friendships look like,
Brown Park.
Grow Clinics are proud supporters of this podcast. And one of the questions we get asked a lot with regards to it, because we've both had it done, is how much does a hair transplant cost? And on their brand new website at growclinics.com.au, they actually have a section dedicated to that called Wondering how much a hair transplant costs?
Because sometimes it can be a bit confronting or you're a bit vulnerable. So you just want to know if it's achievable for you. So you can log on to the website, have a look, click that link, and it'll give you a ballpark figure.
Yeah. And the other thing that they do is they offer payment plans as well so that you can pay it off over a certain amount of time. And they have a mission, right? And it states this on their website as well. It says, our mission at Grow is to be the most trusted hair growth business in the world. And having been through the process, it is a brilliant process.
It's a roller coaster. So you get the hair transplant done, you get to see what your hair's going to look like. It sort of starts growing for the first couple of weeks, and then you go through a shedding phase. So it's like, oh yes, oh no, and then it grows back, and it grows back so thick. So within about 3 months, at the 3 month mark, you start growing your hair properly, and by about month 5 or 6, then you've got a full head of hair.
It's phenomenal, and you can check out all the results of real people growing their hair back for life. Growclinics.com.au. Defy genetics with Grow.
The
Brown
Podcast.
So explain We Are the They.
Yeah, so I don't know if this movie got to Australia or not. There's a movie called The Sound of Freedom. It's about a group that goes undercover and helps rescue kids that are being sex trafficked. Long story short, I had the opportunity to do some work with this group. And on one of the ops, we had a rescue in Latin America. We were coming back from that. And my girlfriend picked me up from the airport. And these ops were super dangerous. We did this rescue, and, these guys had guns on them, the whole thing. I mean, it was pretty scary stuff. And I'm telling her this story, and I'm all pumped because we did this rescue. And she pulls over the truck, and she says, hey, I don't want you to do this anymore. I was like, what are you talking about? I just told you, we just had this beautiful thing, and had this rescue. And she goes, I know, but it's super dangerous. And it's a bad environment. I was like, I know, but this is part of my life's mission now. And she said, I know, but why can't they just go do it? And without thinking, I said, well, there is no they. We are the they. And when I said that, it shot shivers down my spine. I'm like,
awesome.
Oh, shit. We are the they. I'm like, that's so true. In life, people are always, man, they got to do something about this. It's like, no, that's us. Go be the person that makes the change. And so that's what it stands for. And so when I wanted to launch my coaching program, it became the natural next move to do that.
Okay, so somebody that you've worked with, that you've helped the most, what was their situation, without giving names and stuff like that?
Yeah, man. No, we've had so many different transformations. I could tell a million different stories. I'll tell a couple or one or two here real quick. There's one I shared on my podcast, the Jimmy Rex Show. People can go on. There's a guy named Drew Riley about a month or two ago, and he told his story. And it's not, doesn't seem that huge, but it's everything at the same time. And so long story short, when he was a kid, he was 8 years old. His little brother died, who was 6, and several kids in the family. And, this guy, when we met him, he just had this hard shell on him, just didn't let anyone in, didn't let anybody, no emotion, was very hard. And he's very successful. He was a college football player. So people were kind of just thought he was maybe stuck up. And the second time we got together, one of the things we do is we create these environments where men can truly be vulnerable and be seen for the first time. And, we did a cacao ceremony, and it's kind of a heart opener. It's like a hot chocolate, basically. And, and we did a breathwork thing. And, in that meditation that we did, he had this really deep understanding of that situation when he was a kid. Cause he always felt like his parents abandoned him. Nobody was there for him. No one cared about him. Nobody helped him or asked him about his emotions. And so he kind of bottled everything up. And in that, he just broke. And so we watched this guy, we'd been together for about 3 months at the time, working together in a room of 50 men. And this guy who was the hardest shell in the room, just bawling, and he's telling the story, and he's my mom was just trying to keep it together for herself. He's I've always held this against her. And he goes, I gotta go call my mom. And he goes outside, and he calls his mom and tells her and this experience, and he's I forgive you, Mom, and I'm so sorry that I held this against you. And she's bawling, and she's I've waited 20 years for this phone call, and just that's just one that came to my mind right away. But it's just a beautiful story. And this guy, is a completely different human. We've had a lot of guys that, we had one guy recently got up and was molested as a kid, and had never told anybody his whole life. And we did his Navy SEAL training exercise where I actually put him through a torture boot camp. They waterboarded him and everything. It's pretty intense. And brings up a lot of emotions, right? It's designed to help them just bring up some things or whatever. And we did this sharing time, and he gets up and kind of trembling over his words a little bit. And he says, I've never shared this before, but, I got sexually abused when I was a kid. And it was this older guy. He took me out to this tree and this is what happened. And he tells the story and he's just bawling. And he's like, I've never told my wife. I've never told my family. I've never told anybody. And all of a sudden 50 dudes are hugging this dude and loving him and just helping him feel supported. He's able to talk to his wife. And then all of a sudden he's getting healing from this thing. And like those are the moments we had. I'll tell you another one that happened about a year ago. But it's one that just came to my mind that really stands out. So same thing. We were doing a breathwork session and there was a guy in our group. He, when we were sharing after the breathwork session, he got up and he said, a lot of people know I used to be suicidal. He said, what you guys don't know is I'm still suicidal. He said, I actually had a gun in my hand yesterday. And he said, the reason why I've been suicidal is because 5 years ago, my wife and I were dating and I got her pregnant and I convinced her to get an abortion. And he said, I gaslit her to think it was her fault. I've never forgiven myself for doing that. They ended up getting married. They got 3 other kids now. And he's like, but I've always just felt so horrible about this baby that we aborted. He said in that breathwork session, he was able to connect and whatever, talk to his unborn son and get healing from it. And he's just bawling. He's like, I've never told anybody because I thought if they knew who I am, if they knew this thing I did, they'd think I was a horrible human. And man, we all got together and just loved him and just, really made him feel special. And when we did that, what happens is a lot of times we think if anybody knows these dark things about us, these things we've done, these secrets or whatever, they won't love us. But the truth is, when we don't let those people know in our lives that need to, we don't trust the love we're getting because we think, well, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. So when you are vulnerable like that in a safe container and you feel loved in that space, then at that point, oh, I'm just enough. Like I'm lovable exactly as I am. And so that's a lot of what we teach. I could tell you 40 more examples like that one, but that's a lot of kind of what this thing's all about. It's just create a brotherhood where we love each other. We don't judge each other. It's all about where you're going, not where you've been, and try to really help each other along the way.
How much of men's issue or people's issues come down to just suppressing their feelings? Because it feels like that's where it almost all certainly begins there. Everyone's holding on to something.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this, Dion. One of my favorite sayings is the goal is not to feel better, it's to feel more. That's a pinnacle statement that I say all the time because we suppress these feelings. We don't allow ourselves to be mad or sad or whatever it is, and we just hold it in, and then we self-destruct, and we don't have self-love and all those things. And so, that's one of the reasons why we use some of these modalities because they get you in your body real quick. We do Hoppe, for example, or breath work or some of these things. It really puts you in your body, and your body will tell you what you need to look at, the thing that you don't want to. It's usually the thing you're avoiding. And so most men, they just suppress their feelings or they push their shame down and just kind of deal with it, but they've never been able to talk about it, and that ends up eating them alive. And so that's a lot of what we do is help men just be able to talk.
There's a flip side to being vulnerable, and because I did a course where it was a group of people, similar thing, where we all had to say how we're feeling, essentially give up our darker secrets. And there's a flip side to being vulnerable because it actually builds trust, because when somebody's vulnerable, then you see them, you go, well, this person is trustworthy because they're telling me something that is making them feel really uncomfortable.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's, my whole job is to build there's this saying that I have too, is like, you can't change anybody. All you can do is create a container safe enough and inspire them to want to change themselves. And so whole thing that I do is I'll go first when I meet these men and I talk to them about my own life, my own story, and some of these things that aren't so pretty, some of the mistakes that I've made, some of the things I'm currently dealing with, whatever it is at the time. And by doing that, people are like, damn, this dude's talking. Like, he's not afraid to talk about shit. I was like, I wouldn't tell anybody that stuff. But you do, and you and then they're like, wait, I love him more now. Like, I feel connected to him, and all of a sudden they're like, well, I want that. I want to be able to feel that freedom. There's a freedom in it. To be a free man is to, obviously, by the way, I give this caveat, like, you shouldn't be vulnerable with everyone. There's people that take it from you. But that's why you find, your tribe, or you find your mentors, or you find an accountability group that you can trust where, you can actually be vulnerable. But because you do it the wrong people, they can take it back.
Well, it sounds like we are the they that people need Does that make sense? I'm trying to.
Yeah, I certainly think so, man. I think it's the only program out there that's teaching like this. And I grew up with a dad who 95% of the time was amazing and was just a great dad. 5% could be a real bitch, and he didn't have an outlet. I mean, he lost his dad when he was young. He had some family issues. Him and my mom's marriage was just never that great. He was never able to talk about any of this stuff. He never really had an outlet for any of this. And, I remember the first time that I just finally got him to start opening up and talking about it a little bit. And I said, Dad, like, when was the last time you spoke about any of this? He's like, I've never been able to talk about it.
That's that generation.
Whole life. He never did, and he just bottled it up. And I was like, God, and so I created a program that my dad needed, I was like, what difference will it make in the kids' lives of these guys that join this group? And I think it's huge. And so that's why I created this group, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Well, no, I love it. And we'll let you go in a sec, but I just want to just go back to the start where you said you sold the most expensive house in Utah. You'd made you'd made 7-figure commission, and you just went to yourself, this is all there is at there. So can you just touch on that?
Well, what happened at the same time, there was a real estate agent that I was close friends with, and he got killed actually collecting rent at a fourplex at Young. And, he had 7 kids, and the whole news, every story was like, realtor dies, realtor gets shot, realtor killed. And I remember thinking to myself, like, shit, man, if I die tomorrow and that's my headline, like realtor dies, I'm like, it's a fine career. And I was making a lot of money and helping a lot of people find homes and things like that. But I'm like, I'm so much more than that. I'd be so sad if that was my story. And so ultimately I just decided, you know what, where can I do more? Like, I just knew I had special skills that I'd learned. I had a lot of connections. I had a lot of opportunity to do something really special. And that's what I leaned into.
Well, love it. I think there's a book in that. What's your headline? I think, there we go. We can start ours.
My new book, actually, I've got a book coming out in February, and I'm really hoping this one's going to be a New York Times bestseller. I think it's amazing. I just finished it, and it's really beautiful, but it's called Be One. It comes from the Marcus Aurelius quote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one.
Oh.
And the subtitle is How to Be a Healthy Man in Toxic Times. And it's just all the stuff we're talking about today, just how to work through all these different issues. And I'm super proud of it. I think it's going to be a life-changing book. People will find this book hundreds of years from now. It'll change their life. So,
are you doing audio book on that too?
I will. Yeah.
Cool. Because I'm an audio book guy. Because I can't.
Yeah,
actually...
my other book. I have a first book called "You End Up Where You're Heading: The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life." That one's on Audible as well. Awesome. I went in and filmed that myself and did that. Nice. So, yeah.
We are the they. I hope you bring yourself to Australia and do some of this, and don't go swimming with the sharks over here because they're a bit different. But there's lots of stuff that you could actually do with guys in Australia that would benefit from.
Jimmy, you need to do that. You need to do a We Are the They over here for sure.
Oh, I'm confident we will find our way to Australia sooner than later. So yeah, no, I really think it's going to be a global movement. I hope so. I think it can change a lot of people's lives. I appreciate you guys, having me on, and I think it's my first podcast from Australia. I've done a few from Asia and Europe and stuff, but I appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, man, it's you never know. Like I'll end it with this. Like, you guys are doing this podcast. A lot of times you might be like, does this even matter? Is anyone even listening? Because it's like, if you're doing it for likes or popularity or fame or money, you're probably going to get bored and quit. Like none of that comes. Yeah. I had a guy, one of the guys that gave his TED Talk at my event this last weekend. He's a 21-year-old kid. I didn't even know this story. I didn't know how he found my group. He's been with us for a little over a year and a half. His TED Talk, he put up a picture. It was a headline from a newspaper. It said, 15-year-old threatens California school with a bomb. And I'm like, oh. And he tells the story. He was the 15-year-old. And it was a big misunderstanding. It was a joke. He was prank calling the school, pretending to be a reporter, and they were being rude. So he goes, I'm going to bomb your school, and hangs up. Well, not one adult in the room to realize this was just nothing. So they call the police, they arrest him, he gets suspended. All of his friends' parents say he can't hang out with him. Kid finds himself 3 months later just completely alone. Like, everyone has abandoned him, not one adult in the freaking room. And he said, at the time his mom actually walked in on him, he had a gun, and she walked in and was like, what are you doing? And he said, I didn't know if I was ever going to actually do it, but I was thinking about it every day. He said, I was going through Instagram on the search page, and he said, I saw clip of a podcast that Jimmy Rex had done with Kyle Van Noy. He's a former football player for the Patriots. And he said, I just listened to it. I was like, that's cool. And he says, the first podcast I ever listened to. And he goes, I ended up binging every episode Jimmy's ever done. It's what got me through when like I didn't have friends. I didn't have anybody to like help me. I would just put on another podcast. I'd go for a walk. I'd go for a bike ride. And then he found my group. And then now he's got 50 friends. And when he was done with his speech, I said, if anybody thinks less of Tyson right now, raise your hand. If you think that if you've never loved him more, go give him a hug. And every guy lines up for 10 minutes. We're just freaking hugging and loving this guy, being like, so sorry this happened. Yeah, but that's my point is like, we do these podcasts and we don't know. You never know. I didn't know that kid was listening until this last weekend. And, you know, it's been 5 years. It changed his whole life. And so I appreciate you guys and somebody listening to this today. Hopefully help them. You know, maybe they gives them an idea or they find themselves, you know, maybe a little bit in a place where Christo was and it'll change everything for them. And so I just congratulate you guys and appreciate you having me on and let me share some stories.
Thank you
Go
so
and
much.
say hi to Gary V for us.
I will. Yeah, we've got a little dinner tonight, so we're going to go say hello.
Legend. Mate, Jimmy Rex. All the details of how you can get in contact with Jimmy are in the show notes of this podcast, mate. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy yourselves. Take care.
I feel inspired. I'm going to go and swim with fish.
We've done that almost. We've let them nibble on our feet.
That's actually true. We have too. That was really...
See, we should have told him.
Yeah.
We should have told him how. We should have told him how hardcore we are. Well, we have swum with
fish. Okay, for those that don't know, the video, and when we can probably pop it back up on our socials, we actually did this, last year, I think? We went to this place and they let fish nibble on your feet to try and clean your feet. And it was the weirdest fucking thing that I think I've ever done.
And apparently they've got now the full body one. I think it's open now where you do your whole body. That would be odd. You'd have to tape up your nipples.
And also...
And your
junk,
yes.
yeah.
Or you don't.
Well, would you... I don't... like, I couldn't imagine it. The feeling in the feet was really weird, but the feeling on the whole body would just be like, get off me.
Oh, it would almost be unbearable.
Yeah. Anyway, look, Jimmy Rex, probably something that he might do. You can go and follow him at We Are The They. And like I said, all the details for that are in the show notes of this podcast. If you want to reach out, please find us on socials, which is...
Brown Park Official.
And we've also got our website, which is brownpark.com.au.
Which there is some merch. We always mention it, but there is merch available. So be a Brown Park supporter.
Yes.
And become part of our tribe.
Yes. That's it for us. We'll see you next time on the Brown Park Podcast. Thanks for listening.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want to be sad.